I'm the Chair of the Housing Commission Board of Commissioners. It is 9:10 a.m. on February 16, 2024, and I'm going to call to order today's regular meeting of the board. I apologize for the delay. I was waiting for Joyce and Yada to get here, and it is not a meeting unless she's sitting here smiling at me, so I was a little worried. Scott Marshall and Lisa have reassured me that Joy is not here, but she's doing well. So we are meeting in person this morning with commissioner, staff, and members of the public in attendance. We have a quorum with 4 members of the commission present. Video of today's meeting is also being streamed live online. A link to watch today's meeting is on the Housing Commission website at www.sdhc.org. Members of the public who wish to provide comments to the board will need to complete a speaker slip here in the boardroom. You know the routine. Scott Marshall is standing to the side. And in a moment, I will be proposing that agenda items 100 and 103 be placed on the consent agenda for today's meeting. Members of the public may provide comments about any of the items on the consent agenda by submitting a speaker slip. And to speak in favor, please submit a gold-colored form. To speak in opposition, please submit a pink-colored form. And those who wish to speak to the board about a topic that is not on the agenda, please fill out a white speaker slip. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each to provide their comments about agenda items or non-agenda public comments. However, if a large number of people wish to provide non-agenda public comments or speak on a single agenda item, comments will be limited to 1 minute each. Collective testimony by those who support or oppose an item shall be limited to no more than 15 minutes total per side. So when I call your name, please step up to the podium, state your name for the record, and begin making your comments. Now is the time for non-agenda public comments. I see some speaker slips making their way up to my hand. Thank you very much. And we have one. And it is Seraphima. And as Seraphima is making her way to Good morning.
Hi, morning. Well, thank you for hearing me out today. And sorry, I'm not used to doing this, but I'm here to voice the concerns in the Kearney Vista apartments related to the concerns from the tenants and what's really happening there. I've actually met with some housing commission members and even Hyder Property Management that does the property management there, and even the telecare staff in my witness for the last 2-3 years. Actually, my background is I'm a homeless advocate for 15 plus years, and I've known I have friends that lived there, and I say friends because I've known them before when they were on the street front to the convention center and now into the Kearney Vista. There's a lot that's going on there. I think it's time to kind of rethink what organizations are there because they're not helping. I'm sorry, to report this, but again, I've been a witness. I kind of look at everything. I'm not the type of person that takes sides. I just kind of look at everything as best as I can, and I pray about it a lot. And so this is my first time coming here. Actually, a lot of them want to come here. I just said, okay, let me just go and see and see what we could talk about. But basically, the telecare services there, and I've raised this concern to the county. I guess it's the county that has chooses who the services are there. But I think it's time to do a change with that organization. It's more so personnel. The way that they're being treated is just it's inhumane. I've witnessed too much to the point it's like I don't want to get emotional about it because I see what they're going through and how they're being treated, and I think you all need to really consider going there yourselves. I mean, the rent is another issue too. Their rents are going up. We don't know don't know why, but they're living with rats, roaches, and black mold still since the beginning. You need to tent the whole place, or something. It's just very unhealthy. They go get tested in their lungs and they find something in there, and with their breathing. You have elderly people that can't, maybe some can't maintain their place because they have bodily ailments. And so anyhow, that's why I'm here. I just want to kind of speak on their behalf, and really somebody needs to go there from your organization versus the other people that I've been talking to, because they need a lot of help. And there's a lot of elderly people, children, and living with people that have no accountability and causing havoc pretty much. So, yeah, sorry.
No problem, sir. No, don't apologize.
Okay.
We appreciate you coming down and making us aware of the situation.
Yeah.
Lisa, I'll ask that you take a look at what's happening. And, again, we appreciate it. I think that we always want everybody to live in appropriate conditions in any place. So thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I don't see any additional speaker slips that have been submitted, so that concludes the public agenda comment items, or the public comments for non-agenda public items. Next, I'll ask the commissioners if they would like to make any comments.
Casey. Casey already knows my question for anybody watching.
Good morning. So to report on the activities of the Coordinated Shelter Intake Program, in January we had 278 completed referrals, which equates to 11%. It's the lowest month we've had since we've started tracking this. That was out of 2,613 referrals. Year to date, this brings our average down to 18% of referrals being completed. 87% are incomplete referrals simply due to the fact that we don't have an appropriate bed that meets their needs, whether it's based on gender, top bunk, bottom bunk, whatever it is that they're seeking. In January, I will point out that intakes were somewhat impacted by the storm on January 22nd, because as you are aware, 16th and Newton had to be relocated, and of course, we had to suspend intakes while we tried to outreach to folks that hadn't made it back to their bed, and Rachel's Promise had to be temporarily relocated, so that shelter also was impacted in not taking intakes at the time. So that has had a little bit of an impact on January's numbers. But in the end, 99% average occupancy across the shelter and 6 to 13 beds available on any given day.
Thank you. That's obviously that's a troubling number and a change from the already troubling month to month. And I appreciate the explanation about the storm. I guess my follow-up would be, so it is the 11% as opposed to the closer to 20% that we've seen recently. Is that kind of entirely explainable by the direct impacts of the storm, or is this also, for example, that we have people who are displaced by the storm that are that we're having an increase in referrals?
I can't say precisely, but I guess what I mean is that like inclement weather was activated almost every night, so that could have impacted demand on beds, but I guess I can't really make the correlation. It just seemed that it could potentially have an impact, but I don't have any further data to prove that.
Yeah, so it sounds like at this time we can't really differentiate how much of that change from the prior month was weather related.
Yeah, I mean, our trajectory it's been decreasing since the start of the fiscal year. Like if you look at December and November, and October, we had 18%, and this is a very sudden drop.
Right. So can I say, I think maybe too, because folks who had been living outside were also impacted by the storm, and some of them went into the Red Cross shelter that was stood up. Then we'd worked on some transfers into the existing shelter system that were basically outside of coordinated intake, so that might have decreased beds. So that's a potential impact of the storm. And also we have less beds because of sort of some of the temporary suspension in intakes because of having to move the shelters around. Is that fair to say, Casey?
Yeah, it is fair to say, but Jonathan very graciously just pointed out that we had over 1,000 more referrals in the month of January. So actually, there's the math.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That is a very relevant piece of the.
I'm tired.
Yeah, no, I fully appreciate how tired you must be this month. That is a very unsettling number. That 1,000, and just to be clear here, we are not talking about the 1,000 people that we have identified as being displaced. This is a different 1,000 that we're referring to, a different category of people that were seeking shelter, not the 1,000 people who were housed prior to the 22nd. Okay, thank you.
So, and also it's just as a reminder, these are 1,000 referrals, not necessarily 1,000 separate individuals, because some folks may be trying to repeatedly come in.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Klempner. No further comments? I will use this opportunity to, before we head over to Lisa for her CEO's report, I want to say to the entire San Diego Housing Commission team and family of employees, we as a Board of Commissioners, are all very proud of what you're doing right now. On January 27th, I remember that Saturday morning, I called Lisa and I said, we have a situation that we did not expect, that we maybe aren't even trained for, but there's a need for us. It's the time and the moment. And with all the flooding that happened, we were witnessing the devastation, lives that have been impacted in a horrific way. And Lisa and I had a good conversation, and we were both fearful. Lisa will remember this, because we wanted to do the right thing, but we didn't want to disappoint anybody. And I saw Jonathan and Casey this morning, and I shook their hands out of sincere appreciation. I've heard their names a bunch over the last few weeks. I've heard the names of several of you over the past few weeks, and all you're doing. And this is the time to say thank you, because I know there's some long days, frustrations, but what you've done is you've displayed the culture of this organization. You've displayed that when there's a crisis and people need to lean in, that's what you do. You don't step back. And as Lisa knows, I've been on text chains and phone calls with community folks, with government folks, and talking about how what's happening. And it's heartbreaking to see that some people's their lives have been disrupted, but some of them have lost everything. And I want to say thanks to some people, Lucky Duck and Illumina, when Suket's not here, but when we had to set up a fund to try and raise money to get people housed and into apartments, Suket didn't hesitate, and it was great to see that community support. And there have been some comments made about, is the Housing Commission really equipped to help people in this situation? And Lisa knows how I feel about that. I was upset by some of those comments because we were jumping into action, and I want to say thanks to Casey Castillo at the food bank, who Casey Snell and Jonathan have seen a bunch, because when I called Casey right after I called Lisa, he didn't hesitate 1 minute. The San Diego Food Bank jumped into action because it wasn't just about getting people placed and housed. It was about making sure people were fed, basic needs in life. And again, it would be unfortunate for me not to acknowledge that I know it has been long days. And Crystal Irving, she's not here, but all the housing specialists, for you agreeing to make a change in your daily routine and really step up to help and as part of this collaborative. And so thank you to everybody that's been involved. Thank you to this entire organization, because I've been incredibly proud of what you've done during a time of need. And going forward, if Ellen Nash were here, she'd hear me. She'd say, I say this all the time, the time for us, this collaborative, to grow between the city and the county and the congressional delegation and the state delegation and the Housing Commission, because these lives are not going to return back to normal next week or week after next. Some of these lives are going to be disrupted for the next, 6 months to a year. But what you did during time of crisis in the early days was nothing short of fantastic. So thank you very much for what you've done. And remember that this is a time for collaboration and creativity, not consternation. And so thank you. And with that, we will now turn to the report from the President and CEO, who has returned for her second meeting. I wasn't so certain when.
Yeah, it was a little dicey.
It was a little
over the last
dicey.
few weeks, yeah.
Lisa Jones.
Good morning, Commissioners. We've got a few items that we'd like to share with you this morning. So to talk a little bit about the Housing Commission's response. In the aftermath of the storm and flooding that occurred on the 22nd, the Housing Commission established an incident command structure and implemented programs to provide emergency hotel placements for City of San Diego households that were displaced from their homes. We continued to conduct housing assessments through Sunday, February 11th at the city's local assistance center for these families. All in all, over the several weeks that the Housing Commission team has been pivoting towards this need, we completed a total of 590 housing assessments. We've referred 336 households to hotel rooms we procured to provide shelter for storm-impacted families, and an additional 52 households were referred to the property the Housing Commission owns on Midway that we recently closed escrow on for short-term emergency shelter for them. We referred 85 households to other resources, and 117 households did not need any additional housing assistance to speak of. Last weekend, at the city's local assistance center, we continued to see a high need for emergency hotel assistance. This required us over the weekend to increase the funds we were spending on this program within the terms of the approval we received last week from the Housing Authority for that purpose. The County of San Diego announced on Monday of this week that it had started providing 30 days of temporary lodging for households displaced by the January 22nd flooding. So people already in short-term hotel rooms for which funding is running out, and those who have not yet been in hotels but need temporary lodging due to the flooding are the first people going into the county program. I will also say that we are working with the county very closely to transition folks that will start expiring out towards the end of next week in the 28 days that we are providing assistance. The county has been working daily with Casey and the team to make sure that that we are creating a smooth transition. And over the last few days, the county has done a lot to significantly increase their infusion of resources to make sure that those transitions are effective. Next slide. The Housing Commission's program to provide shelter at hotels or the property we own on Midway was always intended to serve as a bridge until the emergency County of San Diego resources became available. As all of you know, we do not have an annual budget to support this effort. We are using Housing Commission local funds and moving to work funds that are dedicated for other initiatives to instead temporarily fund these storm shelter initiatives. We continue to work closely with the County of San Diego to understand any requirements for any future California Office of Emergency Services and/or FEMA assistance, and several staff have been joining Cal OES calls to understand the requirements to potentially recoup funds. In the staff report we presented to the Housing Authority last week, we indicated that we anticipated funding sources for our efforts to include potential reimbursement from philanthropic resources. To date, we have received some private sector philanthropic contributions, for which we're very grateful. The Lucky Duck Foundation has provided $100,000 in resources, and Illumina has contributed $50,000. As you mentioned, Commissioner Chair Mitchell, the San Diego Food Bank has also been an outstanding partner. They are providing food for 150 households daily at 12 different sites. And Alpha Project is operating the short-term emergency shelter at our Midway property and is providing 182 hot meals daily across these 3 sites. We express a deep thank you to these organizations for their exceptional efforts to assist households through our program, as well as other initiatives. We have also established a way for members of the public to make financial donations toward the cost of providing short-term shelter and assistance to displaced households. Through the QR code on this slide, tax-deductible donations may be made to the Housing Commission's nonprofit affiliate, SDHC Building Opportunities, Inc., through Venmo. We will also add this QR code and information to our website, and donations will help defray the expenses we have incurred for the emergency shelter efforts for storm-affected households, which will enable us to use our local and moving to work funds for the purposes for which they were originally intended. I just want to take a moment before we move on, and I know we'll probably have a discussion on this item, but to thank you for your words and to thank all of the commissioners for the support. I've been reaching out to all of you and those that aren't here today, as well as our council members, almost on a daily basis, or at least very frequently over the last couple weeks. And all we have received is support and gratitude and guidance and help with navigating some of the political challenges, and also really making sure that our families who are so deeply impacted are getting the support and the resources they need by everyone involved. The staff has been incredible. I don't think there is a division or department in this agency who's not been involved in this effort. And frankly, I even have to thank a number of the households that we serve for being patient with us, because about 50 staff from the Homeless Housing Innovations Division have pivoted most of their time and a lot of their personal time, both in the evenings and over the weekends, to support these families that are impacted, even though they also have caseloads of their own that we're trying to manage. So I could not be more grateful, and we are working internally on a variety of ways that we can demonstrate our appreciation for everything you've done. it was a lot of pressure. And there are moments, I think, where all of us were just like, I don't know if I can do tomorrow, right? But everybody did. It's just been incredible. And our real estate division, our IT division, our procurement division, our rental assistance division, our communications division have all just been incredible partners in making this happen. The one thing that I would do differently that I learned after about 3 or 4 days in, when this kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, was that we should have got all of those divisions around the table on the first day. So just to everybody out there, that was a lesson learned, and hopefully we will not have to have anybody in our community experience this kind of crisis again. But we know that when and if they do, we will be even more prepared to be responsive and also to support staff. I think that's really a critical part, is balancing that support to those in need while also supporting staff. So on that sort of note, we'll move on. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today, because we have been looking at a lot of our multi-housing finance projects over the last few months, is our multifamily housing finance bond program. And one of the ways we provide essential financing to create or preserve affordable housing is through this multifamily housing revenue bonds. That's a mouthful. One of the written informational reports noted on today's agenda is the annual report on this program. So I want to share some information about the bond program with you this morning. It's important to keep in mind that the multifamily housing revenue bonds do not create any financial liability for the city, the housing authority, or the housing commission. The bonds are repaid by private sources of funds, such as revenue from the development, the value of the development itself, or guarantees from creditors. And the issuance of these bonds makes a development eligible for non-competitive low-income housing tax credits. And these bonds enable affordable housing developers to obtain below-market financing because interest income from the bonds is exempt from state and federal income taxes. The multifamily housing revenue bond portfolio that we currently manage consists of bonds that supported 90 developments with more than 10,300 affordable rental housing units in the city of San Diego. In calendar year 2023, we authorized the issuance of more than $163 million in bonds towards developments with 555 affordable housing units. The Housing Commission also participates in an innovative partnership with the California Housing Finance Agency that allows for bonds to be recycled. Typically, when a development's construction phase is complete, the developer would pay off the majority of its tax-exempt bonds, which would then be retired and no longer available. Bond recycling allows for those bonds to be used again to support a new project. The California Housing Finance Agency is using a large capital investment from Apple to purchase and reissue recycled bonds. In 2023, 7 developments that will produce 771 affordable housing units in San Diego utilized these recycled bonds program. More information about the Multifamily Housing Revenue Bond Program is also available on our website for those in the public that are interested. One of the indicators of the ongoing significant need for rental assistance in our community is our rental assistance waitlist. At the end of December, our rental assistance division completed a year-long process to update the waitlist. Periodically, updating the waitlist is truly important to maintain accurate lists of applicants for the limited amount of federal rental assistance in the city of San Diego. Currently, we have 57,594 households active on our waiting list, and we continue to see roughly 1,000 new applicants join the waitlist each month. During the waitlist update, we engaged in months of extensive outreach to waitlist families before we started on August 30th, 2023 to remove unresponsive households. Our outreach included contracting with community-based organizations to serve as an access point for those who need in-person assistance to respond to the update. I want to thank those organizations for partnering with us on this effort. They are Casa Familiar, Chicano Federation, Logan Heights Community Development Corporation, Refugee Assistance Center, Horn of Africa Community, and United Women of East Africa. We also sent letters and emails to individual households on the waitlist and raised awareness through multiple posts about the update on our social media accounts. There are a variety of reasons why a waitlist household may not have responded to our efforts. For example, they may have moved out of the area or they no longer need the assistance. We are not able to gather data on why they did not respond. However, we are providing opportunities for households to request to reinstate their original application at their original date if they have been removed from the list. We allow requests for reinstatement up to 24 months after the update deadline for the household, and any household with a disability can be reinstated to the wait list with their original application date and time regardless of when they request reinstatement. Next slide. Our collaboration with community-based organizations for the waitlist update was called Raise and Expand Access with Community Help, or REACH. Under the leadership of Azucena Valladolid, our Executive Vice President of Rental Assistance and Workforce Development, we are now extending that effort as a pilot program to assist the households that currently receive Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher rental assistance from the Housing Commission. The community-based organizations I mentioned before provide assistance in person or by telephone. They help households use computers and scanners to access our online systems. And they also assist our rental assistance families to complete paperwork and gather verification documents like Social Security benefit letters, proof of unemployment benefits, CalWORKs payments, or Veterans Affairs benefits documents. These CBOs are an added resource to increase accessibility to our programs. On January 30th, I participated with Councilmember Stephen Whitburn and development partners on the groundbreaking for the Harrington Heights development in East Village, just a couple blocks away from our offices. The rental apartments at Harrington Heights will remain affordable for 55 years for households with lower income. Based on the area median income today, that means some of the units will have rent affordable for individuals earning about $24,000 a year or less. And other units will be affordable for families of 3 earning about $62,000 a year or less, with a mix of other affordable units. To make this development possible, the San Diego Housing Commission has awarded 115 rental housing vouchers to help pay rent for many of those who will live at Harrington Heights. 75 of those vouchers will assist individuals and veterans experiencing homelessness, and 40 are for households with lower income that are not experiencing homelessness. All of these vouchers are tied to the development, so when a resident moves on, that voucher assistance remains there attached to the unit to assist another household. We also awarded an $8 million loan that consists of federal and local funds the Housing Commission administers, which included home funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development awarded to the City of San Diego and the City of San Diego Affordable Housing Fund. Financing for this development also includes multifamily housing revenue bonds that the Housing Commission authorized and the Housing Authority's approval. And Chelsea Investment Corporation is developing this project near the corner of Broadway and 13th Street. I will say I learned a valuable lesson that I should stick to my talking points. This was my first groundbreaking. But at that point, 7 people had been ahead of me, and I didn't want to just say the same thing. I think several of the staff that were with me that day will probably attest to the fact that it was probably a good thing that Commissioner Klumpner attended the last groundbreaking that happened this week. Not my best vote. I also learned that you never want to follow Councilmember Stephen Whitburn because he was very energizing. So I think at least I brought some comedic relief to that groundbreaking. Anyway, moving on, as I mentioned, yesterday Vice Chair Klumpner represented the Housing Commission, thank goodness, at the groundbreaking of the Skyline Apartments development. You'll recall that this development is being built on a portion of a vacant Metropolitan Transit System parking lot at the Rancho Bernardo Transit Station. When it is completed, it will provide 99 affordable rental apartments for families earning 30% to 55% of San Diego's area median income. We awarded 30 rental housing vouchers to help pay rent for the residents with the lowest income, or 30% of AMI. The board also authorized the issuance of multifamily housing revenue bonds. Got it this time. I was probably just killing it, Jennifer. Toward the financing for this development with the Housing Authority's approval. This development is a collaboration among the City of San Diego, County of San Diego, the Housing Commission, the Metropolitan Transit System, the developer Affirmed Housing, and additional partners. It's a great example of what it takes to come together and make something work. Additional speakers at the groundbreaking included Mayor Todd Gloria, Councilmember Marty Von Wilpert, Councilmember Stephen Whitburn, who also chairs the Metropolitan Transit System Board, and County Supervisor Joel Anderson. We look forward to the grand opening of both Harrington Heights and the Skyline. That concludes our report this morning, and I and staff are available for any questions.
Any further comments? All right.
I've got some questions. Given the situation we're in with the past month and the storm, I was wondering if we could maybe have a little bit of a discussion at this point in the agenda around what Lisa just presented. First of all, let me just say that these updates have been incredibly helpful the last 2 months, Lisa. This is very informative about some of the most important things that are going on that don't pop up as an action item for us. Can you go back to the storm portion of the presentation?
First slide.
Next, yeah, we go. Perfect.
Great, and I want to kind of dig into a few things here. Did I hear you correctly that we've had over 50 staff who and can you explain how we've been handling this massive amount of work that we've undertaken here?
Well, I really wouldn't have been able to do it. None of us would have been able to do it without Casey and Jonathan and Megan leading the effort on making this happen. On a day-to-day basis, anywhere upwards of 50 staff rotating from the Homeless Housing Innovations Division at different levels. It doesn't just take supporting the client, it takes supporting the back end of all of this, tracking all of the data, tracking all of the hotel commitments, coordinating food. So Jonathan actually worked with Casey, and fortunately, because of their background with Operation Shelter to Home, we actually understand what an incident command structure looks like. So they were able to develop lines of effort and even job descriptions for the HHI team that was spending a great majority of their time on this, a lot of overtime for hourly staff and a lot of late nights and weekends for our exempt staff. In addition, a number of staff in procurement have spent a great deal of their time supporting the back end. It's not easy to find, thank you, George and Deborah, and to your team. It is not easy to find 25 to 30 hotels that will just start working with you on literally a dime, right? So basically, hey, guess what? We're the Housing Commission. Can we figure out how to pay you? And can we start moving people into your hotel today? The challenge becomes oftentimes that you have these relationships, conversations with owners and managers, but they have different hotel desk clerks every day, right? So the amount of sort of intensive human interaction that's involved just to place a family and make sure that they get there, there's transportation sorted out, there's food sorted out, someone actually knows they're coming. Created, and frankly, folks that are showing up, at the end of their workday, so at 7, 8 o'clock at night sometimes, and we're placing them until 10, 11, I don't even want to talk about the hours at night. It's been very intensive, but we also had a ton of folks from our real estate division help get our Midway property turned around in about, 36 hours, I think? It was absolutely phenomenal.
That is amazing, and I heard that.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible. So, so it took us, I would say, about maybe 36 hours to stand up a hotel program, and then every day since to continue to refine and support it, and then 36 hours to stand up that Midway project. And fortunately, had an operator that said yes when I didn't really let them know what I was asking them to do. Just asked them to please help. So Alpha Project's been great at that. And then staff in our fiscal division, staff in our legal counsel, staff in our communications team, as I said. So all told, we probably one way or another have, 80 to 100 staff probably in our 350 plus. And folks that weren't directly working on it were probably taking up some slack too, right? So also a huge effort, but really a special thanks to the HHI team.
Well, I want to thank everybody who has been working so hard on this, and I've seen it across the board, including Mercy, your executive assistant. I discovered was making a bunch of calls, so it has been a true all hands on deck situation, and thank you to all of you that have been doing that. One concern, and I think this is absolutely the right thing for us to be doing, one concern I have is the impact that this is having on the mission, because as we discuss month after month, we have a long-term, years-long crisis that has been only getting harder, and these staff, their primary jobs are extremely important and are already under-resourced. How is this impacting our ability to serve the populations that we normally serve? So
certainly, and in fact, so we run a Housing First San Diego helpline. We have prevention diversion programs. Those referrals come in. The ability to which we can respond to those referrals coming in is extremely limited right now. So it is really slowing down new folks coming onto the program that also have need. So from an operations standpoint, and also folks that are already on the program, we're probably it's longer to respond to them. So folks that are receiving resources. And I do just want to also call out our rental assistance division team has jumped in and is also helping with calls, as is the customer experience unit under Mercy. And then the other impact, of course, is if, we have challenges recouping some of these funds, because we asked very basic questions first, got people in, and are going to try to now go back into getting all of the documentation that we were probably going to need for CalUS, because otherwise nobody would have got into a unit nobody has documentation or IDs. But there are also some impacts that we'll have to look at if we are not able to recoup funds, and where there might be things that are not getting addressed there.
That leads right into my next question, which is, can you elaborate more on how we are funding this and what those funds are coming out of?
So we mentioned moving to work funds and local funds. We have to be, the moving to work funds are the majority of the funds that will be utilized. This is impacting budget line items in regards to capital improvements and larger maintenance projects for our 4,000 plus units that we own and manage. It also impacts voucher funds that we have available to serve voucher households, increase payment standards, things of that nature. From a local fund standpoint, we're still determining what that impact would be, but those local funds are important for families that are undocumented but still did lose housing, and we wanted to make sure we could serve them too.
So,
Lisa, can you, I think there's a question, what he's asking about where the funding's coming from. We are going to make an attempt to recoup some of this funding from FEMA. And I think this is where when I made my comments, we're going to need the help of the congressional delegation to lean in to help us recoup some of this funding. But you want to expand on that, Lisa?
So my understanding, and we're still working through this with the county, is that any application directly to FEMA, we would go through the county for. So we're working with them to understand what documentation is needed. But staff have also been working with Cal OES. And I apologize, I don't have an update there. I'm not sure. I know a few staff were on the call, but Jeff Davis we had a direct call with them a couple days ago, and unfortunately, he's not available and he's out of office today. But I can provide an update on that at a later date. Still have to figure out, so when do we go to Cal OES versus going to FEMA? Or is that something that they will align on? So it's something we need to learn.
So I just want to emphasize here for the public and for transparency's sake, the way that we are funding this disaster response right now, putting aside the assumed reimbursements, is that this is coming out of vouchers. This is coming out of service levels for our existing homelessness programs, and this is coming out of maintenance on affordable housing properties. Is that?
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have our fingers crossed. I share your concern, Vice Chair Clevenger, that we have our fingers crossed that the crisis that we were faced on the 26th didn't go away. A new crisis, took control of our focus on the 27th as the households began appearing, and the county was asking, was trying to lean in. Someone at the county said to me, Mitch, if about a weekend, Mitch, if the Housing Commission, if not for the Housing Commission being here, we wouldn't have had any support. And I think that it was one of those moments. We had a long conversation that we were not trained for this, we're not prepared for this, we're not budgeted for this, and our mission is still the same as it was. There are people who need our support every day, and this crisis, again, needed our support, needed our capability and our courage, but we still have to figure out a way, hopefully, to recoup those funds. And I will make this case again that we need the congressional delegation to really help us recoup these fundings, so we are not forgetting the people who need this support each and every day, and as part of our normal and incredibly important mission. So, because they deserve to be cared for, not forgotten, and I know that nobody on this team will do that.
I get emotional at these meetings, and I'm just going to lean into it in this case, because here's what's very disturbing to me about this. This problem is the result of underinvestment in specific communities, targeted underinvestment for decades. I know a bunch of people here have volunteered for cleanups, whether it's part of your job or not. I went down to Beta Street with Council Member Moreno. And, you know, we have streets there that we haven't even built sidewalks on, let alone the flood channel. We have streets that have flooded repeatedly. We have people who are first-time homeowners, first in their family to ever own a home, whose homes are now destroyed and lost. And how are we paying for this right now? We're paying for it by, hopefully temporarily, but we don't know that. We are raiding the limited funds that serve our most vulnerable residents. We are raiding our homeless services. We are raiding affordable housing maintenance. We are raiding vouchers. That is how we're paying for this. That is the absolute worst possible way I can imagine to handle disaster response. A disaster response that was predictable, that everybody saw coming for many years. People talked about the need to prevent and to address and to invest more equitably. And here we are cleaning up the mess using funds that should never have to be used for this purpose, but they're the only things that are available. So I don't know that I have anything else to say about this other than to thank you all for the work that you're doing. I'm so glad that we have these funds available, that we're able to clear all these regulatory hurdles to make these things available. I don't know what would have happened with all of these people on that chart right there. All of those households, those adults, those 394 children, 255 pets. I don't know what would have happened with these people had you all not worked 24 hours a day to get this to happen. But this is not how this should be done. This is how we are forced to do it. Thank you.
I will, Melinda, go ahead. Commissioner Vasquez.
Thank you, Commissioner Klumpner, for such a poignant review of a table of information and forcing us to see the humanity that exists on the board. And I am so grateful to the commission for all your help. It's one of the reasons why when in all spaces, I advocate for every municipality to have a commission like San Diego Housing Commission, because a housing authority isn't enough. It just isn't. And this is a perfect example of how our housing commission came to the call when it wasn't our duty or responsibility, but because it is who we are as a commission. And I'm very proud to be able to sit on this board and say that. I think that one of the takeaways, once we have had, time to rest and recover, is that we need to require from the county and the city and the rest of the municipalities some type of emergency relief. We should have this in place. San Diego has way too many people that can be in jeopardy like this, especially knowing of what these insecurities are within these communities. Yes, it's going to take time and money to rebuild the infrastructure in our most vulnerable communities. So what do we do when something like this happens? Instead of relying on the goodwill of the very people that are doing the hard work every day. So thank you so much for all you've done. And I'm hoping that we can formulate a plan with the county and the city and the congressional leaders so that we have some kind of emergency funds available so that we don't rob from Peter to pay Paul.
Thank you, Commissioner Vasquez. Luckily, for those of you who've watched these meetings, generally when Ryan cries, I cry. So I try to speak before him so that I wouldn't cry. And I even got a little teared up when I was doing that. But luckily, it was before Ryan, because one of the things that I tell people about this board is, if you can't see it in the commissioners, we really do care. This just isn't an appointment. This is something that's really important because we see the struggle on the streets. We see the problem growing, and in this instance, Vice Chair Klempner, you're right that when Lisa told me how many rooms we had secured, was at the time I think she said Mitch between 440 and 450 rooms. I said I thought to myself, had this team of incredible employees not been there, where would the people in those places be today? And Lisa and I have had a lot of conversations over the last few weeks, and there was a moment where I was upset, and my I think people at my house wonder why, was this part of the commission's job? No, this is just our culture. This is just what we do. And so I would agree with you, Commissioner Vasquez. The one thing that we have to think about is going forward, Vice Chair Klempner, these things may continue to happen, unfortunately. And how do we better prepare, right? Because you can't just see it happen and then say, well, I hope somebody else leans in and takes care of it. So, again, I think you hear it from if every member of our team, if you don't hear the appreciation we have for you, rewatch this. But we are sincere in our thoughts, but there's so much more to be done. So, again, I'm just glad that Ryan waited to talk so that I could get through my comments. So, all right. Is that everything, Lisa? Okay. Next up is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 19th, 2024. Scott Marshall, I don't believe there's any speaker slips that have been submitted for this regarding this, for the approval of the minutes. So, with that, Commissioner, is any additional changes to the minutes, or do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Tony. Second by Vice Chair Klempner. This is to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 19th, 2024. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. I apologize.
May I abstain since I wasn't here?
Commissioner Vasquez, I apologize. Yes, we have one abstention. All right. We will now move on to the consent agenda. As I mentioned at the start of today's meeting, I'm proposing the following items on the consent agenda be on the consent agenda for today. Item 100, the approval of the revised resolution for the application to the state for home key funds for the property at 2087 Hotel Circle South. And item 103, the approval of the fiscal year 2025 moving to work annual plan. If you have any comments on this, please provide your speaker slips. Vice President Marshall, I don't see any speaker slips on this one either. So that concludes the public comment for these items. Commissioners, any comments on these two, or do I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Jackson. Second by Vice Chair Klempner. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, seeing none. Any no abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Next up is item 101, and this is the building rehabilitation contract for Pacific Village. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Vice President of Real Estate Development Services, Josh Hoffman, who I'm seeing a lot these days, is presenting this item. Please, Josh, begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. The item before you today is a request to authorize the Housing Commission to enter into a contract for the building rehabilitation at Pacific Village. The following slides provide a summary of this board's actions on the project and milestones to date. To recap, in July 2022, the board authorized the Housing Commission to execute a purchase and sale agreement to acquire the property, formerly Ramada Inn. In February 2023, the board authorized the execution of an architectural design contract for the conversion of the property to affordable housing. Project plans were submitted to the city and are currently permit ready and pending issuance following notification to the city of the selection of the general contractor. Sorry, wrong presentation.
Usually it's the controller that doesn't work.
Yeah, no.
So,
or somewhere else.
I mean, we'll at least mix it up a bit, right? So, Josh,
How are you, Chair Mitchell?
yeah, I mean, you got a lot on your plate, you're working on a few things.
Fair enough. Never a dull moment around
Never a dull moment around here, no, I'm gonna tell you right now, so I think we're all set now.
here. Okay.
Okay. I assume this is the whole presentation.
It's the right title slide.
Okay.
There we go. Here we go. In May 2023, the board authorized an application for State of California Department of Housing and Community Development Home Key Program grant funds. In September 2023, the Housing Commission was notified of an award in the amount of $16,850,000 for the project, now to be named Pacific Village. In November of 2023, the board approved the acceptance of the home key funds, as well as $5,921,281 each from the city and county to support the acquisition and rehabilitation of the property. On January 2nd of this year, the Housing Commission commenced a two-step competitive solicitation process for construction services for the rehabilitation of the property. And most recently, on January 26th, the Housing Commission successfully closed on the acquisition of the property. This slide shows the property in its current state. You'll recall it is located at 3737 and 3747 Midway Drive in the Midway Sports Arena area in Council District 2. The hotel was built in 1959 and consists of 64 guest rooms in a two-story walk-up building with a lobby and a small laundry room. After the rehabilitation is completed, the property will consist of 62 permanent affordable rental housing units with supportive services for people experiencing homelessness, one unrestricted manager's unit, and office space for service providers and property management. The construction scope of work includes, but is not limited to, the items shown on this slide. For the contractor solicitation, the Housing Commission engaged in a two-step process with a request for qualifications, or RFQ, followed by an invitation for bid, or IFB. The RFQ was issued on January 2nd of this year. 3,063 notices were sent to contractors, and 94 downloaded the RFQ. A pre-proposal meeting was held on January 5th, and 19 contractors attended. A site walk was held on January 10th, and 6 contractors attended. RFQ proposals were due on January 23rd, and 1 response was received from LDCO. Using the RFQ scoring criteria in the RFQ pamphlet, an evaluation committee deemed LDCO a qualified respondent. Neither the number of responses or number of qualified respondents were disclosed following the RFQ. The IFB was issued to LDCO on January 29th and closed on February 5th. The number of qualified respondents was not disclosed in the IFB. LDCO responded with a bid for the base project scope plus a list of defined cost add alternates that totaled $11,378,943.29. This was deemed reasonable when compared to 2 cost estimates from outside companies and the project's approved capital budget. LDCO was also able to provide unit costs in their bid that will be the basis for allowances to be included in the contract amount. Unused allowances will be credited back to the Housing Commission at the conclusion of the project. This table identifies the sources and uses of funds for the proposed rehabilitation of the property, as previously approved by this board. The building rehabilitation contract for Pacific Village will be funded by sources totaling $14,420,126. The uses of these funds will be applied to a hard cost amount not to exceed $13,149,934, with any remainder of their approved budget of $14,420,126 reserved for hard cost contingency. This contingency will not be expended unless there's a demonstrated need. In the aftermath of heavy rainfall and associated flooding that displaced many households from their homes in San Diego, the Housing Commission identified Pacific Village as a site for short-term emergency shelter for storm-impacted households. To accommodate the proposed interim shelter use, HCD granted the Housing Commission a 105-day extension to the project schedule. On February 3rd, 2024, households began moving into the property for temporary shelter stays. The rehabilitation will commence as soon as possible after the use of the property as short-term emergency shelter has concluded. HCD's completion milestone for the project is now set at January 9th, 2025. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and is shown on the next 2 slides. This concludes the presentation. I'm available for your questions.
Thank you, Josh. We will take public comments. If there are any speaker slips, I do not see any speaker slips that have been submitted on item 101. So commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Vasquez.
Josh, I just had a question. When was the project due to be completed?
Originally, the HCD deadline was for September 26th of 2024. And
Okay.
that's 12 months from the date of the award letter.
So it was pushed back by about approximately 4 months, it looks like, or 3 months?
3.5,
Three and
yeah.
a half, yeah, due to the crises with the flooding.
Correct.
Yeah, so excellent use of shelter, everyone. But thank you for the update.
Okay. Seeing no further comments or questions. Again, I want to echo that again. When Lisa called and said that we've figured out that we could use this property at a tremendous time during a tremendous time of need, and the fast action that went into getting it ready, still superb. So, great job to the team.
Thank you. I also just want to highlight a fun conversation with staff when we decided that when we just got the authority from HCD, which we were very, very grateful for that waiver, where we had to call and say, okay, we're going to turn this into an emergency shelter. And they went, there's a termite tent going up right now. So literally, like on a dime, called the vendor and said, sorry, we're going to have to take that down, because fortunately fumigation had not started, but really just incredibly responsive team. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Not to continue, but I can't help but also point out that I'm so happy that this was available, and also it had not quite occurred to me that on the back end of this, what's happening is a 3-ish month delay in the use of the site for permanent supportive housing. So, this is incredibly important, both in its use as emergency shelter. We're very fortunate that the timing aligned on that, and this is now being absorbed by the folks that would be moving into that, who will have to do so at a later date than they otherwise would have. The other thing I'd like to say on this is these programs and Home Key in particular, I think it needs to be pointed out how unusual these are to administer, in the sense that, the traditional affordable housing that we deal with, other types of market rate development that happen out there in the regular world, just do not have the types of constraints and hurdles that go along with these public programs, including there's very tight timelines on when this has to be available per the state's funding source, correct? And that obviously impacts the number of vendors that are willing to work within those constraints when those deadlines are so rigid. And I appreciate the work that the staff has done to maintain a competitive process and be transparent with us about how that process plays out. These programs, whether it be the appraisal of the site or how we do the improvements to the site, they are just not comparable to many other projects. And so what we rely on is the staff work that you and the other folks do to keep these processes as competitive as possible, to make sure that we're getting the best deal that we can. And I think that what we can all really kind of rest on at the end of the day is that we know that that the total cost to generate the permanent supportive housing that we're getting here is very competitive and better than most of the permanent supportive housing we get elsewhere. And so even if it impacts things like how much has to be spent on the improvements, or the price we pay for the property, and the big picture of the resources that we have to work with, this is a very efficient use or efficient pathway to generating more permanent supportive housing. So I wanted to kind of acknowledge those things before we vote on this, given that these are unusual. I think it's important for the public to understand why these are not regular projects. These are very specific programs with very specific requirements and funding sources. Thank you.
Just real quick, sorry, to your point, Commissioner Klumpner, thank you for bringing it up. When you think of the city's investment in this, it's less than $94,000 per unit. So, and it brings in about, $94,000 a unit, and it brings in significant amount of money from the state. So from a city cost, it's a very low cost investment.
And I think we also have to point out that at the state level, we're receiving this funding because we were competitive, and this was a good value in terms of the funds that the state was administering. So this makes sense all around, even if it doesn't make sense by comparing it to other projects necessarily, because we don't have other projects that are in these situations. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just close with as Vice Chair Klempner says, great situation. There are those that have complained and issued their concerns about this program, but I will tell you right now that this is the best decision we've ever made. Is cost and the ability to turn something into, as Vice Chair Klempner always reminds us, into action that can help people immediately. And so for those that don't believe in this program, they're not the ones that are actually depending on the property for housing and support. So without any further comments or questions, I will entertain a motion and a second if possible.
I move to approve 101.
Okay. A motion by Commissioner Vasquez. Was there a second? Second by Commissioner Jackson. All right. All those in favor of the motion to approve, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. All right. We'll move on to the next item, and that is item 102. And this is an amendment to the contract with Father Joe's Villages to operate the bridge shelter at Golden Hall. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Joining us are two people I think you've heard of before, Casey Snell and Jonathan Herrera, and they will make a presentation on this. And the floor is yours. Please begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're here today to present staff's recommendation to approve an amendment to the fiscal year 24 agreement between the San Diego Housing Commission and Father Joe's Villages to operate the City of San Diego's bridge shelter for single adults at Golden Hall. On July 12, 2022, at the conclusion of a competitive procurement process, the Housing Authority of the City of San Diego approved the execution of a one-year operating agreement with Father Joe's Villages to continue operating the City of San Diego's bridge shelter at Golden Hall. The Housing Authority also authorized 2 one-year options to renew the agreement. Father Joe's has operated the program since 2017. The Housing Commission exercised the first of the 2 renewal options at the onset of fiscal year 24. The Bridge Shelter Program provides safe, low-barrier shelter and stabilization and supportive services to prepare people experiencing homelessness for the most appropriate, permanent, or longer-term housing intervention. In alignment with the existing service model and established best practices, Father Joe's Villages continues to provide 24-hour residential and supportive services staff, meal services, and ancillary facilities and routine client supplies. Supportive services include housing-focused case management, as well as connections to primary care, behavioral health, mental health, and substance use services through Father Joe's Villages or other community partners. Father Joe's Villages staff continue to work collaboratively with stakeholders in and around Golden Hall to coordinate security activities and to promote a clean and safe environment as part of the program's Good Neighbor policy.
In advance of the fiscal year 24 budget development process, City of San Diego notified the Housing Commission of several planned changes to the program's operations, which included a reduction in the capacity of the single adult program serving men from 324 individuals to 262, and the closure of the Transition Age Youth and Families program that operated on the second floor. The Housing Commission relayed these changes to Father Joe's Villages and worked with the operator to plan and develop an operating budget based on these anticipated changes. In August 2023, the Transition Age Youth and Families programs ceased operations, and all residents of those programs were successfully transitioned to other operations. Given the difficulties of securing ancillary facilities in a timely fashion, the city decided to maintain the shower trailer on the second floor. In November of 2023, the Housing Commission was advised that the single adult program would relocate to the second floor of the Golden Hall in April 2024. The delayed reduction in the program capacity reduction and the cost of the second floor ancillary facility rentals are unanticipated expenses that were not reflected in the initial operating budget. As outlined in the table on this slide, staff is recommending that the FY24 budget be increased by $1 million $189,036 for an adjusted operating budget totaling $5,775,220. The City of San Diego is anticipated to commit additional homeless housing assistance and prevention funds to support the proposed budget increase. The projected FY25 budget for ongoing operations of the single adult program from the second floor totals $5,625,527. The remaining option year will be exercised contingent upon the City of San Diego making funds available for this purpose. Housing Commission staff recommends that the Board of Commissioners take the action detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. That concludes our presentation. We're available for questions.
Thank you very much. All right, we are now going to look and see if there are any public comments on item 102. I don't see any speaker slips, so that concludes the public comment period for this item. Commissioners, comments, questions?
Sorry, I'm talkative this morning. So with the increase of $1.something million, was there any inquiry as to, well, I'm assuming that staff inquired as to why there was an increase in redevelopment of the second floor, and what were the unknowns at the time of the original approval?
So the increase in costs were really because when we developed the FY24 budget, we didn't have all the information we needed to develop the budget appropriately. So we were advised that the first floor shelter accommodates 324 men, and we were told that that would be reduced to 262. So our budget was based on serving 262, but that was never realized. We actually continued to serve 324, and we still do today, until we relocate to the second floor on April 1st, and then we have to reduce to 272.
So this was mostly related to the city sort of changing the timelines around some of these decisions that had originally thought would be triggered sooner.
Exactly.
So when Casey and the team got new information, they had to redo the budget because we were supporting more people longer.
I have one question.
Commissioner Jackson.
So basically, going forward, this increase in additional funding is to cover the costs for the previous tenants, because you're reducing the amount of tenants. So I was curious as to why are we paying more?
Well, I think that's where the confusion was, Katie. We didn't go back down from 324 to 262 originally as planned. We stayed at 324.
So, okay, to cover the costs.
Okay.
Exactly. And originally, we were anticipating relocating that shelter in October, and again, now it's pushed out to April, so we were paying for more folks for a longer period of time.
To your point, Commissioner Jackson, we were spending money faster.
Faster than what the budget allotted.
Yeah, so in order to now continue to finish off the year, we need more.
Need more.
And again, it is being extended. That's also another big issue. So, Vice Chair Cloner.
I want to thank the city for both making this property available since, I'm sorry, when did you say we started this? Golden Hall. At Golden Hall, I've been here the whole time.
It was in the final year of the previous administration, I believe. Yeah.
Whoops. FY19, I believe. It was the year I started.
Okay.
So 2018.
2018,
yeah.
Got it. Well, I want to thank the city for making Golden Hall available for this purpose. I was supportive of it at the time, and have supported all the service contracts since then. And also, I want to make clear here too that the city thankfully is providing the funding. We're administering these services. I do want to say that there has been a real drift in how this shelter has worked, and it has been hard even for me to keep track of what the plan is, if there's a plan. And I know that you both are just kind of rolling with the punches on this, but just to sort of, can you go back to the slide that shows how this started? Were we always serving single adult men here, or when I got a tour when it opened,
mixed?
I don't know that did it have any single adult men?
No, it did not. So pre-COVID, it was a family shelter. So upstairs we had a capacity for 210 folks, so including cribs. So it was focused on families. But before COVID, we had started looking at integrating transitional age youth shelter into there. So we made 46 beds available on the second floor for the Tay community. However, it didn't come to fruition because we moved to Operation Shelter at Home. So then in 2021, spring of 2021, when we moved back, we were able to start with the Tay upstairs with the families, but also the city opened the opportunity to expand the shelter to the first floor to serve one gender, so 324 men. So that just started in spring 2021.
Got it. Those are very different populations that we're serving, and one of the things that I think made the original concept make a lot of sense was that site seemed more suitable for the populations, that there were less complications around, frankly. And I like the direction that we have moved in terms of I think that the families that have been relocated are in a better environment than Golden Hall. And we need every shelter bed we can get anywhere in this city. And I will just be on record saying I'll take any and all of them. I have never seen a proposed site that I had any objection to. I think we should have homeless services in every single neighborhood in this city of some fashion. My increasing concern with Golden Hall is how dramatically different the population is than when it started, and the fact that this is in a location that was not designed for this. And I think everybody's been doing the best they can. But do we have? Is there any plan? Well, one, do we know when this is going to end? Because there's been a number of. We're here today because this was coming to an end or scaling down, and then it didn't. Do we know when there will be an end date, or if there will be an end date?
Unfortunately, at this time, no, we don't have absolute clarity. We have enough to be able to initiate budget conversations and continue operations. We are aware that the fire marshal will have to continue to approve occupancy of that second floor on an ongoing basis. At this point, the HSSD is driving that conversation.
And as the population changed from families and youth to single adult men, have we had to make operational changes to account for that in terms of how the services are administered? And
So, Jonathan, I think it'd be good to talk about the pilot program that's going on right now. I will also say that from the very beginning, even way back when it was families with and transition age youth, and then now with downstairs, one of the things that the city has done is have SDPD come in and do sort of a security assessment. I believe one comment years ago was it's like trying to secure Swiss cheese because there's just so many different entrances and exits. So the security costs, when you drill into this budget, are very high. Because sometimes it can appear to the public or folks, city staff walking by, that a security guard is just standing there, but that's actually their job, is to just literally monitor that entrance because there's so many. So high security costs to sort of manage some of that, and then actually going from the downstairs to the upstairs, probably significant because you have two separate areas that are being managed. But there are some things that they've been testing and piloting, which is not sort of a standard practice for shelter, but was something that we were working through as a pilot. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you, Lisa. So the pilot Lisa's referring to is the implementation of walk-through metal detectors, which is unprecedented at any of the shelter programs we have. But in response to feedback we were receiving from program clients, staff, community partners about security incidences that were taking place at Golden Hall. That's a 90-day pilot that concluded at the end of January. We're in the process of assessing security incident reports, feedback, and surveys that we conducted throughout the pilot program to assess the impact and whether it delivered the desired results. And that'll be part of a continued conversation with Father Joe's, amongst other activities and improvements to increase site resiliency.
Yeah, I seem to recall, I think we amended a contract a while back to increase the security. Is it, great, that's great to hear that we're trying that. I think this is safe to say, but I want to double check. We didn't really have the security concerns that we have now when it was a different population, I would assume, right? I don't recall hearing about any of those.
So for the most part, there were incidents, not to the degree that there are right now. There's a lot of factors at play, and it's not just related to the fact that it's a single adult male population, but that there are a variety of different populations within that shelter, and so that is having some play in the process. And although technically the pilot ended 90 days, we are extending that pilot right now. So, and when Jonathan says unprecedented, none of the other shelters that the city or the commission oversee utilize metal detectors. It's considered can be very trauma-inducing for certain populations, and it's not generally considered a low barrier. But it's a constant balance of resident and staff safety. So we received some feedback last year, I believe it was in November at City Council, from shelter residents and advocates about feeling safe in shelter, right? So we also want to create opportunities for people to feel safe, which is why a lot of the survey work has been done to try to gauge that balance, along with the incident reporting.
One quick question. What about the cost effectiveness of this program compared to the other shelters? How does that compare? I've noticed sometimes, and I think it was maybe 6 months ago on the news, they were talking about closing that shelter down at Golden Hall and moving the residents to another location. But it seems if we get in the process of we close one down, we open another one up, the net bed effect is not the best.
Yeah, I think that and this is probably, Lisa, a good time to say that maybe staff can come back at an upcoming meeting. The original plan was the city made a decision to close it down. There was the redevelopment discussion happening. And out of the redevelopment discussion began other discussions around the old downtown library, the navigation center, the H Barracks property over in NTC. And I think what the city was looking at was, if we close this down, can we create other opportunities at these locations? The real question, and I think Vice Chair Klempner would agree, is the speed of which you can get these locations set up so you don't lose bed. You want to have a net gain. And you want to be able to divide your populations up appropriately. One of the things that was beautiful about Operation Shelter to Home was we had the populations divided properly at the convention center. And so, you know, I think there are some questions about H Barracks and the cost effectiveness. I think that there are questions about the downtown library site and how fast that can be developed. So this will become more complex. The extension, when we made the decision to move Tay out of Golden Hall, remember there was a plan that we said we were going to move some Tay youth, create 60 beds downstairs in our building, and hopefully the permits for that continue to move quickly, because I've received assurance a couple of times from the city that they will help us move fast for that. So I think that they're looking at various things that we just hopefully in the next 18 months will be up and operating and providing more capacity. With a net gain.
I think that
that's the key.
Long-term goal for the city is just to add more beds, right? Understanding that there's a number of locations for a variety of reasons, including 16th and Newton, that have to permanently relocate because a housing project is going up near there. But to your point around cost, our average cost, I believe, ranges 80 to 120, depending on the location?
It really depends on the location. It's very hard to compare programs because of the different ancillary services, if it's a brick and mortar, if it's a sprung structure. But I would say Golden Hall is one of our lowest cost programs. It's about anywhere from $35 to $40 a bed night, which is, really, quite honestly, it's because we don't have to rely on as many showers, and we have bathrooms, we have plumbing. It makes it a lot less
Right.
expensive. But even with the security expenses, it's still one of our lower costing programs.
Tony, you kind of hit the nail on the head as to where I was going with this, which is it just seems like, not Jonathan and Casey, but it seems like we're flying by the seat of our pants. And Golden Hall is sort of like the epitome of that, in that we're 5+ years in now, and the plan has changed multiple times, and there's a different set of challenges and expenses every time, and we're amending contracts constantly, and there's a budget shortfall because the population, the numbers didn't move along the schedule that we assumed they were going to. This problem is not going anywhere. It is long-term. We need permanent solutions. The things that you just pointed out about the efficiencies of Golden Hall are based on the fact that it's a permanent structure with plumbing that was never designed for what we're using it for, but is still more than we have at many other places. And I think if we step back and we look at Golden Hall and what's happening with Golden Hall, yes, we need to approve this today, but the lesson that I hope everybody at the city in particular is taking from this is that year to year ad hoc solutions are incredibly inefficient. They make it impossible for us to refine and get better at doing one job because we are constantly changing the job. The job of serving 300 single adult men is a different job than serving families. And we need more permanent shelter that we are not running on 6-month and 1-year timeframes and extensions and amendments, because it is not the way to address a permanent situation with this constant piecemeal approach. And so, we don't have any option here other than to keep going on the path we're on here. But the real option is we can choose a permanent path with permanent programs that are going to serve a population that for the time being we have to assume is going to be a permanent population that we're going to have to be serving. So thank you to both of you for keeping up with all of these constant changes and keeping us informed about what's going on, and it is hard to follow. And Lisa and I were getting interviewed a few months ago by a Wall Street Journal reporter who asked about this, and I was embarrassed. He had been following the meetings from New York. I had no idea. And I was embarrassed when he asked about the close down timeline, and I realized that the plan had changed like 3 times since the last time I had heard it, and I had no idea what the answer was to his question. So, it just seems like there has to be a better way. So I hope all of our partners at the city, and again, I appreciate that this is their cost, this is their property, but there has to be a better way to do this.
Right. Further comments, questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Commissioner Jackson. Second by Commissioner Vasquez. Seeing no further comments, questions, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, next up on the agenda is item 104. It's an informational workshop about the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Rental Assistance Program. We'll take public comments after the staff presentation. Azucena Valladolid will come and give us the information related to this item. And again, public comment afterwards. The mic is yours. Please begin when you're ready.
Good morning. With me this morning is Carrie Bell, Senior Vice President of Rental Assistance. We appreciate the opportunity to provide an overview of the Housing Commission's Rental Assistance Division programs. Rental Assistance is the Housing Commission's largest program. Over the course of our multi-part informational workshops, we are providing you an in-depth look at the program's intricacies, specifically from a client's viewpoint. Today's workshop is a part 2 of a 3-part overview. In part 1, we shared an overview of the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program waiting list, initial eligibility, and move-in processes. Today, we will showcase occupancy requirements, housing inspections, and program integrity. The final presentation will provide an overview of our special purpose, moving to work, and permanent supportive housing rental assistance programs. Path to Success is one of our Moving to Work initiatives. It modified the method we use to determine the portion of rent, of monthly rent that rental assistance families and public housing residents pay. Path to Success also encourages Housing Choice Voucher participants to become more financially self-reliant. Under Path to Success, rental assistance households are identified as either work-able or elderly disabled. Bless you. Work-able families are households with at least one adult who is younger than 55, not disabled, and not a full-time student between the ages of 18 and 23. Starting in July of this year, the age range to be identified as work-able will change to be households with at least one adult younger than 62 instead of 55. Work-able families pay either the minimum monthly rent payment amount or a predetermined amount of rent that is based on the family's annual income, whichever is greater. The minimum rent payment amount for a household with one work-able person is $400 per month. For households with two or more work-able persons, the minimum rent is $650 per month. To determine the work-able family's portion of the rent payment, the Housing Commission established income ranges. The lower edge of the range is used to calculate the family's rent payment. For example, if a household earns anywhere between $25,000 and $29,999 per year, $25,000 will be used to calculate their portion of rent. This enables rental assistance participants to increase their earnings without immediately paying more rent, so they can direct that money to other financial goals. Elderly disabled households are not subject to minimum rents. One of the Housing Commission's ongoing responsibilities is to verify that the participating household continues to be eligible for the rental assistance program. To do this, we conduct a full recertification and verification of the participants' families, income, and household composition. This recertification process occurs every 2 years for every household Housing Choice Voucher family. At least 90 days in advance of the effective date, we send families a recertification packet to complete. During the recertification, the Housing Commission is responsible to verify the family's household composition, income, and deductions, review the household's annual income and apply related deductions and other factors that might affect their adjusted annual income, and update the rent calculation to redetermine the tenant's share of rent. We then provide a notification of changes to the family and the landlord. If the participating household disagrees with our rent calculation, they have an opportunity to ask us to review the calculation again. A participating family may ask the Housing Commission to review the family's income and composition between the regular recertification, based on family changes that may occur. This includes, but is not limited to, changes in the family's income or household size, or to request the addition of a live-in aid. These requests are called interim certifications or interims. They can be initiated by the family in writing or verbally at any time. Only factors that have changed will be verified. These are often requested when a household income is decreased. There are some scenarios in which the interim request from the family is mandatory, including when a household member moves out of the assisted unit, a minor moves into the assisted unit, a change from full-time student status to a lesser level occurs, or there is a new source of income for a household that previously had no income.
The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and Housing Commission regulations allow families to move and continue to receive rental assistance. The family may move into another housing unit within our jurisdiction or to a unit outside of the Housing Commission's jurisdiction. The family retains the choice of which unit and area within our jurisdiction to move that best fits their needs. There are a few restrictions on moves. They cannot be within the initial term of the lease. The unit cannot be in fail status due to tenant-caused damages. The client cannot have unresolved lease violations. The client cannot be the subject of any current referrals to the Housing Commission's Program Integrity Unit. The family must be current with payments if they are in a back payment plan. And the family cannot be a work-able household with zero income. A participating family has the right to receive tenant-based voucher assistance and to lease a unit outside of our jurisdiction. They are able to lease a unit anywhere in the United States in the jurisdiction of another public housing agency with a tenant-based housing choice voucher program. The Housing Commission will also accept a family with a valid voucher that moves from another jurisdiction into our jurisdiction. When a participant family moves to the Housing Commission's jurisdiction, which is the City of San Diego, the housing voucher program will be administered under our Housing Choice Voucher guidelines. When an assisted household moves from the initial public housing agency's jurisdiction to another, the initial agency transfers the rental subsidy to the receiving PHA. This helps cover the cost of the household's rental assistance. HUD also allows receiving public housing agencies to absorb the moving family into their rental assistance portfolio. If this occurs, it obligates the receiving agency to pay for the household's rental assistance. When a family requests to move outside of our jurisdiction, the request must specify the area to which the family wants to move. This process is called porting out. During our recent update of the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waitlist, which started late 2022, we began a pilot program called Raise and Expand Access with Community Help, or REACH. This was a program to contract with community-based organizations to assist households that wanted to complete or update their waitlist application. REACH is now available to assist our Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program participants as well. The community-based organizations we contracted with for this program include Casa Familiar, Chicano Federation, Logan Heights Community Development Corporation, and the Refugee Center. They assist our rental assistance families to complete our paperwork and gather verification documents like Social Security benefit letters, proof of unemployment benefits, or denial of those benefits, Cal work payments, or Veteran Affairs benefits documents. They also help our rental assistance families use computers and scanners to access our online systems. The community-based organizations are an added resource to increase accessibility to our programs. The Housing Commission is required to ensure that all housing units occupied by Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher rental assistance participants must meet certain health and safety standards. These housing quality standards are set by the U.S. Department of Housing, Urban Development, or HUD. Before the Housing Commission enters into a contract and issues rental assistance payments, units must pass a housing quality standards inspection. All rental housing units are inspected before a family moves into a unit and every 2 years thereafter. A rental housing unit that fails inspection could result in rental assistance payments being delayed or suspended. An inspection may also be requested if a tenant reports a problem and the landlord fails to make repairs within a reasonable time frame, or if we receive a complaint from another agency or third party. We have posted videos on our website that show examples of what we look for during these housing quality standard inspections. These videos are available under the Doing Business with Us menu by selecting Landlords and then Inspections. HUD has announced that its updated inspection standards, known as the National Standards for the Physical Inspection of Real Estate, or INSPIRE, which will require implementation on October 1st, 2024. In the meantime, we continue to use HUD's housing quality standards for property inspections for the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. Inspections can result in various outcomes. Emergency failed items that endanger the family's health or safety must be corrected within 24 hours of notification. For non-emergency failed items, repairs must be completed within 30 days. If an inspection is canceled or results in a no-show, another inspection is scheduled approximately 14 days out from the no-show/cancellation. If a family misses or cancels 3 inspection appointments, the Housing Commission will consider the family in violation of the program family obligations and will determine if the process to terminate the family's assistance due to ongoing noncompliance should begin. The Housing Commission is also responsible to conduct rent reasonableness reviews of the property owner's requested rent amount. This is to ensure that the rents charged by landlords are reasonable based on the comparable units in the rental market that do not receive rental assistance. A rent reasonableness review is conducted at the time a household is seeking approval to rent a new unit and when the property owner submits a rent change request. The Rental Assistance Division has a program integrity unit dedicated to investigating allegations of rental assistance program violations. Alleged program violations may include, but not limited to, families with unauthorized household members, unreported income, or participant in program or program fraud. The Housing Commission receives referrals about alleged program violations from our online form, program abuse telephone hotline, housing assistance, and our customer experience unit staff who are trained to take reports of alleged fraud and program abuse. Families failing to meet program requirements may be subject to program warnings, compliance agreements, repayment plans, and actions up to termination of rental assistance. Participant households who disagree with the Housing Commission's decisions have the opportunity to contest the decision. If the Housing Commission decides to terminate the rental assistance, the family is entitled to a hearing conducted by an impartial third party. We look forward to returning next month to provide information about our special purpose, moving to work, and permanent supportive rental assistance programs, and how we can use them to have a positive impact among our vulnerable populations, including those who experience homelessness. Azucena and I are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. And I apologize, Carrie, when you were coming up, I was,
No
I always
worries.
get so tongue-tied. So, Senior Vice President Carrie Bell, thank you very much. Lisa, I think you had a couple comments on this.
I just wanted to, and we know this, but it bears reminding that the rental assistance program serves over 17,000 households on average on a daily basis. That also includes 17,000 landlord contracts. So that's not, obviously not that many landlords, but there's a lot behind this, as well as managing a lot of other activities and 55,000 households on the waiting list. I think it's just want to say that it is very much a testament to Azucena's and to Carrie's leadership that by far the largest program with thousands and tens of thousands of clients and customers in one way or another is we hardly ever hear any challenges or even successes about, right? Like we hear, I mean, it's the biggest program we run. We have thousands and thousands of customers, both from a participant standpoint and from a landlord standpoint. And it's a testament to them and actually staff at every position of the Rental Assistance Division that it runs so well and that it literally takes 3 workshops to barely touch on everything that they're covering. So just thank you.
I just want to say thank you for these workshops. I find them incredibly informative, and also I'm sure that other commissioners get this too. I get questions from time to time about program details that I do not know the answer to, and having somewhere to point where it's explained and terms people can understand is really helpful. And how many landlords do we have participating?
So we have an average of about 5,000 participating landlords.
That is fantastic, and I want to note that San Diego has a income non-discrimination ordinance, so landlords are supposed to accept tenants who can afford the rent regardless of how they are paying the rent. But we know that really doesn't rely on enforcement. That relies primarily on the voluntary participation there. And to Lisa's point, it is incredibly impressive that there is as little friction in this process, and it runs so smoothly with so many landlords and so many tenants. So thank you for both explaining this and giving us less to hear about on the issues with it. So thank you.
Mr. Vasquez.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I just want to say that, again, this is why I say that every municipality in San Diego County should have a housing commission or some type of co-op of a housing commission, because I have a client in Oceanside and they are in a difficult situation, and I feel like the housing choice voucher program that as detailed, where you can have an adult a working adult who is also caring for their elderly parent with Alzheimer's can operate and earn income enough to pay for his child and still not violate the housing voucher program, right, for the amount of income earned. I think we need to graduate from this base knowledge of, oh, everybody lives on their own and we don't have combined families and living together, when we know that this is exactly what happens when money is tight, right? People start doubling up. And I just am grateful that, again, you are being creative and looking at all of the residents in San Diego County instead of just the nuts and bolts residents of the past, right? So thank you for the program. Thank you for explaining it. And I'm definitely going to be reaching out.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes, I just have a couple comments here. I appreciate the update on the information. But it seems like there could be more on the CBOs that were listed, a little more outreach into maybe the different areas.
Yeah, I thought the
on
same
that.
thing, yeah.
I noticed that. And one of the other things I also noticed was if there's an issue with the landlord, and you said they have 30 days to fix the issue, who's following up with the landlord? I don't think there's really much of a follow-up response on it, because personally I know that situations have happened and another agency had to step in order to get the job done.
So when there is a complaint inspection or a regular inspection that is normally done biannually, SDHC will complete the inspection and then provide a notice both to the client and landlord of the failed items. The landlord would have the 30 days to correct, within 30 days to correct that item. We schedule a re-inspection, and then the owner, we verify that all the items are corrected. If the landlord fails to complete the corrections, the HUD guidelines indicate that we need to place the unit into abatement, which stops payment to the landlord until they correct their items. If it continues beyond that point for an additional 30 days, approximately 30 days, then the contract, we would give notice to the landlord and tenant and say the contract needs to end. But typically we typically don't get into that point. We have a lot of communication from our inspections department to ensure that we can get the items fixed so that we can keep the housing stability maintained. So that is never our objective, but we can have consequences for the landlord if they fail to meet the expectations of the HAP contract or the contract.
Now, I understand the consequences for the landlord, but in the same time, if the is terminated with the landlord, the person that's a rental assistant is penalized also, because they're losing their housing for the landlord not doing his completing the repairs. So I think there needs to be someone, I know that they have a certain time frame, 30 days to do the repairs. If the landlord doesn't do the repairs to the 28th or starts repairs on the 28th day and it takes 60 days, that person has been sitting there for almost 90 days now with a problem and an issue at their residence. So I think there needs to be a little bit more follow-up in between that process when the time the notice is issued before the abatement comes in, okay, in that 30-day period, because you could have a landlord that just doesn't want to do it, okay, and doesn't care about the tenant. And unless there's some more pressure put on them, they're not going to do that repair, or they're going to do it at their own will and time. And I can say that personally, I've seen that situation happen. So I just wanted to know where the Housing Commission might want to step in at 15 days, or send them a notification of follow-up to see what the repairs are being done with the landlord. And it's a real issue that is going on, and you have landlords out there that aren't going to do anything until they're actually feet are put to the fire. Personally, myself, I had to have the VA involved in it, and they got involved after he got an abatement letter, and told him you have a federal agency on you now, and we need to get the repairs done. And within 48 hours, they started the repairs.
Yeah, I would just suggest that I think that Commissioner Jackson has a good point, but Lisa, maybe what you and the team could come back with are some suggestions on increased interaction to make sure the timeline is that they're sticking to the timeline and not waiting to the deadline of the extension. I think there are probably some ways to improve that. So can you guys come back with some things?
Yeah, it's a communication issue, I think.
Yeah, and I'd also like to emphasize that if we do inspect a unit and the unit fails for health or safety issues, the landlords are given 24 hours to make the repair. So there's also a variance in the type of failed inspections that will trigger more rapid follow-up as well.
Yeah, I understand that. And basically, what this issue was, it was the kitchen sink that was backed up for over a month. I look at that as a health issue myself, but it's not listed as a health issue according to the guidelines. It's listed in the 30-day repair process. So there's dirty water, everything being backed up in there. That should be changed to be a health issue.
Yeah, so we will definitely take a look. I think we could take a look at our procedures and processes just to see how we can do more intensive follow-up. We do have a team of, we have a landlord services unit, we have a landlord liaison that we might be able to tap into, so we will take your feedback and come back with some suggestions.
I mean, the issues were resolved, but I'm just saying it's something that.
I look forward to hearing your suggestions. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up? I'm sorry if I missed it in the press. How many abatements happen annually? Do we?
I don't have that exact number, but it is not a substantial amount, especially because of that communication I mentioned between any failed items and also working with the landlord if maybe they're working with contractors. So we really work heavily with our inspectors and our inspector coordinator and manager to make sure that we don't get to that point. It's not substantial. I don't have the exact numbers, though.
And Tony, you did get me sort of curious. So what does happen to the tenant? Because it is a little bit odd that, you know, obviously the landlord is on the hook, but there's a tenant in the middle of that too.
Yeah, so as soon as the failed notices go out, the tenant is made aware, so they also receive a written notice. If we come to the point where we are re-inspecting the unit and the unit still remains in a failed status, the client is provided with an option to move, so we issue them a move voucher. We also connect them with our mobility counseling team, which helps them we provide rental search assistance, rental listings to help prepare them for a possible transition if they need to. We also trigger insecurity deposit assistance as well.
Good.
Got it. Thank you. That was exactly the answer I was hoping to hear, is that there were resources available for the tenant in those cases. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. This is informational item only, so no motion is necessary. And good job. All right. This concludes the meeting today. I thought there was a lot of conversation, a lot about the activities that are happening. So thank you once again. And if no further comments, questions, the meeting is now officially adjourned at 10:57 a.m. Thank you very much, everyone.